the conference, going pro with Rashad Bateman. But they have gotten experience. This team is probably the most experienced offense in the Big Ten. I mean, up and down the board, their whole entire offensive line are seniors. Tanner Morgan, redshirt senior. Muhammad Ibrahim, redshirt senior running back. Chris Altman-Bell, redshirt senior wide receiver. Clay Geary, redshirt senior wide receiver. This team has battle-tested. They've played together. You know, they've got a lot of experience and a lot of on-field time, and that means something. That means a lot, which means they've seen about every scenario. They've seen probably getting blown out, winning close games, winning big, you know, losing players. And Tanner Morgan is a really, really good college quarterback. I haven't done a dive into his mechanics and into his things yet, but he has proven that he's a very good college quarterback, and I will get into him later in future episodes as far as what his outlook is as a pro, what his outlook is for Devy. But it's another guy who, if you're in multi-quarterback leagues in college fantasy, he's a guy you're going to lean on week in and week out because he's going to put up some numbers, and he's got the stuff all around him. Good offensive line, very experienced, a fantastic running back, could be the best running back in the conference when it all shakes out. There is some new players coming in that are going to challenge for that, but Muhammad Ibrahim, he's a big time Devy asset right now in Devy drafts, and Minnesota is really good. And I like Minnesota. Probably, I would say they're my favorite Big Ten team. I love their colors. I like their stadium. Their stadium is really neat looking, and Marion Barber came from Minnesota, and he was a rock for Dallas Cowboys for a few years. He'd just run you over. So I like Minnesota. I always find myself rooting for Minnesota as well. So be interesting to see how they do this year. And this is the team that could challenge Wisconsin and challenge Iowa and maybe even Northwestern. When it's all said and done, to come out of the West and represent the West in the Big Ten championship. Speaking of Iowa, okay. Iowa's got a couple of kids that you must know their names. You have to know their names, so I'm going to tell them to you right now. Iowa's 6-2 last year. They have a very good offensive line, and if you put on some film for their very highly talented running back, 5'10", 200-pound junior Tyler Goodson, and I put on some film of this guy. And I watched the film from Brandon Lejeune at Devy Deep Dive. Thanks, Brandon, for putting that out there. And this kid, he has vision. His vision is fantastic. He has good speed. He doesn't have great speed. He has good speed, but his vision, his burst, and his balance all rolled into with his good speed. And the offensive line there at Iowa opening up, truck-size holes for him to find lanes through. He had a fantastic season, and, he should really take that next step up and be one of the premier players, in the Big Ten and maybe even all of college football. And really, his name will be stamped as, holy crap, where'd this guy come from? He came out of nowhere. Well, no, you heard his name here on the Hitman podcast. Tyler Goodson is a really, really good, solid running back, 5'10", 200 pounds. That's my wheelhouse right there. I just talked about it. He's in my wheelhouse, and he runs upright, which I'm okay with that. Eddie George did it, and Robert Smith did it, and they had fantastic NFL careers. But he's very good, and I cannot wait to see how he does this year. When you're thinking Iowa, you're thinking tight ends, right? You're thinking George Kittle comes to mind, just like that. They've got another guy here. And I overlooked him 2 seasons ago in college fantasy. I took Bayer, the other tight end they had there at Iowa, and I overlooked this kid. His name's Sam Laporta. He's a junior now, 6'4", 249, and he's not being overlooked anymore. And to me, he's another version of George Kittle. He's dragging people. He's going across. He's making good catches. He did have a couple of drops and a couple where it looked like he may have given up on the route on some of the stuff I've seen. But this was in a season where I'm not holding any of that against him. This is his year to get back into it and really make a name for himself in tight ends. I don't talk tight ends a whole lot on this show because I'm not a big tight end and fantasy kind of guy, but we're talking more team chemistry and team nucleuses this week, and we're sprinkling in a little bit of fantasy, on top of it. But Sam Laporta is going to be a guy that Spencer Petras, the 6'5", 231-pound quarterback, is going to lean highly on. And Iowa runs two tight end sets. They run two tight end sets all the time, and they're known for putting tight ends into the NFL. So don't be surprised if this year at the end of the season, if you take Sam Laporta in a league or you see his name popping up on the bottom of ESPN where he's had 6 catches for 100 yards or 2 touchdowns, don't be surprised because he's got that kind of talent, and he's really going to be an asset for the Hawkeyes this year. Hawkeyes were 6-2 last year, and they're going to contend again. They're going to contend for the West, and another team that when you think Big Ten, you think maybe you think Iowa. Maybe Iowa's one of those teams that you think Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Purdue. Those are one of the stalwarts of the conference, and you always expect Iowa to be tough. They're going to play you tough. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and they're not going to roll over for you. And that's Iowa football, at its core, and Iowa's going to have another good season, and they've got a couple of really big weapons there to help get them through. Last team on the West Division, 6-1 Northwestern. Now this team jumped up and surprised us all last year. Okay, now I think their only loss was to Ohio State, and we all knew going in that Ohio State was probably going to win that game. And it's just Ohio State was just that good, and they were just that much better, and they did win it. It doesn't take anything away from in a shrunken season, a COVID year. Northwestern went 6-1. I want to talk a little bit about a kid who was a freshman last year, and I'm going to throw these numbers at you just because he was a freshman. And I wrote these numbers down because this kind of stuck out to me. In 7 games, he had 81 carries, 331 yards. That's 4 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns. Sophomore running back Cam Porter, and he is from LaSalle High School, just south of here in Cincinnati, Ohio. 5'10", 220. He's in my wheelhouse. And this kid, I don't think he's going to run past anybody, but he's not afraid to do the little things. When you put on film from him, he steps right up in the hole, and he takes on blockers, and he stones them. Like, he just, he did whiff a couple. He did whiff on a couple, but when he stepped up, when he got himself up, he would step right up as a freshman and just smack a guy and block him. And, that's going to get him playing time because he's going to be in there on passing downs because he can pass block. So that's a name that I'm looking at from Northwestern that I'm really interested to see. Not only is he from Ohio, but, he had a very decent freshman year, 4 yards a carry, and he sprinkled in 5 touchdowns in 7 games. So that's really good. I'm interested to see what Cam Porter does as a junior, or as a sophomore, and what he does for the Northwestern Wildcats. That wraps up the West Division. We're moving to the East Division, but before we do that, this West Division, you're looking at Northwestern's going to be pretty good again. Iowa's going to be good. I expect Wisconsin and Minnesota, all those teams, to really have seasons that give them a chance to play in the Big Ten championship. A dark horse in this would be Nebraska. If Scott Frost can get it together, if Adrian Martinez has the kind of year that he needs to have, Nebraska could be a wild card and a dark horse to come out of the Big Ten. That would be a stretch, and I look for Purdue to continue to build as I do with Illinois. Moving on to the East, and here's the teams in the East Division that everybody expects are going to be good year in and year out. And we're going to start with the Spartans, Michigan State, from East Lansing, and they're going to have some new faces here. We got some transfers coming in to Michigan State, and I think we're going to have a quarterback battle, and I think we're going to have a running back battle for Michigan State. Kenneth Walker sophomore transfer from Wake Forest at the running back position, and also Elijah Collins, a redshirt junior. I think those guys are going to maybe split time or fight for touches in this offense as Michigan State looks to bounce back from a 2-5 season last year and get better. Like I said, I think we're going to have a quarterback battle also at the for the Spartans. Anthony Russo, he's a grad transfer from Temple, 6'4", 245. He didn't transfer just to sit and watch, so he's going to push Peyton Thorne, redshirt sophomore, 6'2", 215. He's going to push for playing time. Our lads currently has Thorne listed as the quarterback in the starting slot, but I think Russo will push him. He's a bigger quarterback, and he transferred to Michigan State for a reason, and he's coming in to win that job. So that being said, you've got some pieces of the puzzle that are a little bit unstable. Okay, who's going to play quarterback? Who's it going to be? Who's the guy? If Russo wins the job, is he on a short leash? Or if Thorne wins the job, is he throwing an interception and you're going to see Russo? I like to know who the quarterback's going to be, and that's your guy. And, so hopefully they get it worked out during camp, and the team can settle in around one guy, and it's not a short leash on a guy, give him a hook after a bad game. I don't like giving a kid a hook. You gave him the job. You stick with him, warts and all, and see it through. Now, if he plays 6 bad games and they start out 0-6 or 1-5, then yeah, you're making a switch because you're at that point your season's pretty much toast anyway. But if he's had one bad game, you can't give a kid a short leash if there is indeed a quarterback battle at Michigan State. Michigan 2-4, very disappointing season last year for the Wolverines. Their quarterback transferred out. He was there. He was from Florida, the state of Florida, and he went to Michigan, and then he left. So that's not the guys that I really want to talk about on the Michigan offense. Nico Collins left for the NFL. He's now a Texan. So they've lost some firepower at their quarterback, and they've lost their most prolific wide receiver from last year. But to me, the highlight spot and the spotlight is on the running back position. There's 3 guys in Michigan that I can talk about at the running back position. Hassan Haskins, 6'1", 220. He is a load. He is a horse. He's a senior, and he's going to get the ball. He's going to get the blunt of the carries. The odd man out here in this running back trio I want to talk about is Blake Corum. He was the guy that we talked about last year a little bit as a Debbie darling and a guy who may pop, but they brought in a guy, 5'11", 190, a freshman named Donovan Edwards, and I put on tape from this guy, and I just like, oh wow, I like this guy already. The question is playing time. Is he going to get enough playing time? Because Haskins is a senior, and they're probably going to give him the majority of the carries. So I don't know if he's going to be any good in college fantasy this year, but he's definitely a guy that I'm looking at, Devy possibility long term. He scored 3 touchdowns in his senior year in the state championship. And this is state championship. The team he's playing was no slouch. It wasn't like he just went in there and rolled over the conference's worst team. State championship. The team that was there, was there for a reason too. He went in and just lit them up. So I really like Donovan Edwards, and he's a guy that you just watch film on him and you're like, man, this kid is good, and he's gonna play a lot of football at Michigan. He went to a big name Power 5 school, and he's going to be the guy. And I feel that Blake Corum might be the odd man out there once Edwards, gets some traction. And for Michigan, it's all about Harbaugh. 2-4. That doesn't get it done for Michigan. I don't care if it's a COVID year or not. You've got to be better than that. This is Michigan we're talking about. Okay, you're Michigan. You're Michigan. Michigan. Blue blood of college football. Desmond Howard, Michigan. So we're talking they got to be better this year. I'm not sure if maybe it was we're wiping the board clean. We're giving Harbaugh a chance again since 2020 was such a turd, and he's going to get a chance. And if he does it again, we're going to cut him loose. But Michigan has to be better, and they can lean on them running backs.